Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Ron. It's Monday evening, a little after 6, January 20th. We'll see if we have any questions from yesterday. Anybody have any questions? We talked a lot about the current affairs and what's going on and the fact that the inauguration took place today on MLK Day and looking at that from a spiritual perspective. Uh, any questions or any follow-up on any of that?
I think what's ironic, Ron,
Mhm.
is that none of us thought about yesterday that this is MLK Day and holiday, and we not meet. Well, I think that was interesting.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that part of it, did we?
And yeah, it may be too important, and this may be the best way you can honor what he
Yeah.
tried to do.
I went to work today, of course. I think the part that I thought was a little ironic was he had during the inauguration, they had three ministers there. One was a rabbi, one was a Baptist preacher, black guy, and another one was a Catholic priest, I think. And the black minister quoted Martin Luther King and talked about I have a dream, and I thought that was interesting. So of all things, and I wondered if somebody told him to do that, but I just thought that was interesting.
Usually, everything at an inauguration is orchestrated.
Okay.
Pretty much nothing is left to chance. And as far as
Uh,
those three denominations being there, that's standard at inaugurations.
okay. Because he was the only one of the three that was pretty animated, which I thought was interesting too.
What did he say? I mean, what was the dream?
He was supposed to do a prayer. And you guys, if you have a chance, maybe you could YouTube his little speech, but he went into Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream and as though Trump is fulfilling that dream. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I guess the whole thing was to kind of tie everybody into this administration as to say I'm representing everybody kind of thing. But I just thought it was funny that it did not go unnoticed to them that this was MLK Day. They had to go out of their way to make that happen.
Well, not really, because they knew from the time of long before the election
Yeah.
that this was going to happen. And inaugurations and the speeches that they give in inauguration may be tweaked before, like a week before. But most of them are written after they start writing them after the election. So they knew it was going to be Martin Luther King Day. They just tried to figure out how they were going to handle it.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions about anything, really? You have to stick to that. Anybody have any questions, comments, observations? Anything you want to talk about?
I think that not only is it ironic that it fell on this day, but I also believe that the truth was said today that this is going to be one of the most consequential presidency ever. And I do believe it's going to be consequential. The only question is in what way will it be consequential?
Yeah.
And I declare that it will become consequential by virtue of everyone not hearing what they want to hear, but everyone seeing this country for what it is and responding accordingly.
Man. Yeah.
I have a question to ask.
Okay.
My question is, during the inauguration, they mentioned something about today is no longer MLK Day, but Liberation Day.
That's a ploy that Trump engaged in because he claims to represent Hispanics, African Americans, and everyone else in this country. And in the next breath, he talks about deporting uh, the people who are from south of the border and putting soldiers on the border to keep anyone from coming in. So I see that as what geared towards the people of color, because white folk are already liberated.
Yeah. That's interesting though.
I have a question, Pastor Jay and Ron. We talked about at one of the meetings. We talked about the veil has been torn. Is there a final veil that will be torn, or veil comes in segments or whatever? Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Veil, yes, the veil is oh my God. It's one of those things you say when things are being revealed, and it comes from the veil having been torn in Christianity. That's the origin of it. So when we say that the veil has been torn in regards to what we do, we're simply stating of the times that we live in, because in the 50s, when Emmett Till was murdered, the veil was torn, and people all over the world saw the lynchings in a different way, a totally different way, and it launched the civil rights movement. So it's just one of those bumper sticker things that we say.
Okay, because what happened when y'all talked about that, about the veil had been torn, and you said that we were not going to shake it or anything. That's when the pandemic hit. It was before the pandemic had hit, and there were changes in the world. Now with this, I feel another veil has been torn, but it's going to be something major this time. I just feel that's going to happen. We're going to see stuff we've never seen before. It'll be a new heaven and a new earth. But I just feel something's going to happen. And I'll just leave it at that. I just have a feeling within me that
You're right.
something's about to take place.
Something is going to happen, but I don't think we look at it as another veil has been torn. It simply is that it is a saying to indicate that things are different and will be different in the future. That's what that saying means. Of course, it came from the tearing of the veil in the scriptures when Jesus was resurrected, or said to be resurrected anyway. So what I'm saying in essence is this, that we definitely know that things are going to happen in a different way, also in a major way. However, the difference between what we were saying and not, and we said don't shape it. But when the veil was torn in terms of Emmett Till, the shaping of it was the civil rights movement to the extent that when they were not getting much traction, they began to do things to initiate coverage. One of the things that they did was when oh my God, what's her name? Sat on the bus.
Parks.
Yeah, when she refused to move from her seat on the bus, that was orchestrated. And the reason I say it was orchestrated is because there was a 16-year-old girl who was supposed to do that, but they found out she was pregnant. And that's why they didn't allow her to do it. And even before Rosa Parks refused to get up, there was another lady who had refused to relinquish her seat as well. So sometimes you have to orchestrate things in order to get the attention of those who you are seeking to be a part of what you're doing, as well as get coverage from what you're doing. And the idea of refusing a seat, the boycott, all of that was already planned before she refused to give up her seat.
Did that address your question, Evelyn?
Yeah, it does. And I remember when we once said that Trump came, he was sent to do things that we are not even aware of. So I stopped criticizing at one time the things that he was doing, but God moves in different ways. And like you said, we don't know what the outcome gonna be, but I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? I have a question. Kind of elementary, actually. I'm trying to gain some footing here. I'm trying to see something, and I feel better about this than I did. I want to ask a question about ancestors. Um, Everyone that dies, regardless race, what they believed in or whatever, everyone that dies is your ancestor. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe that.
So when we say ancestors, are we talking about the people that have the same beliefs or people who are searching for truth? Or because I don't believe that either, and I'm trying to see this.
Uh,
And
may I speak to that for a moment?
please do.
First of all, the only, as I said yesterday, um, we um, we came from God, and we are the only people who has God's DNA because we came directly from God. Are you with me?
Okay.
Everyone else came from us. So they have a residual, and that is what's meant when it says that everyone came from the same womb, the African womb. That's a residual effect of who we are.
Okay.
And we are the only people in the earth who had the genetic capability of bringing everyone into this earth, even though they don't look like us, Chinese, Japanese, etc. And and I believe that ancestry, in terms of being a guiding force in the earth are African ancestors.
Okay. I thought that. I did, but I didn't want to say that. I didn't. Okay. That makes sense. I can see that now.
Are there any other questions about that or comments?
I have a comment. This is Audrey. Um, remember that book I was reading about, the African genius? Anyway, in there, it talks about, how the belief in ancestry was based on, the idea that, there was an oral history that was passed down from generation to generation to generation. So most African groups believe that their ancestors were those people who were their beginning. They brought them to the place where they settled, and they were the people who their oral history came from, and that they were the people who established them in the land where they are. And so their connection to that history and the land told them who their ancestors were. So it had to do with the concept of how they began. Those were the people who were their ancestors, the ones who began their history and their establishment in whatever land they were living on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But that was one of the reasons I don't have it in here now beside me, but that little book I bought about I was talking to you guys about, and I still want to talk some more about that because I love that little book about this African village and how it's really one family, the oneness, the uniqueness of it. I got that because I like not only knowing the history, but I wanted to feel it and see what that feels like. And I guess with us being raised and educated the way we have been, that connection can be sort of distant sometimes. And it's just something I've been thinking about. I was telling Pastor when I wake up, you ever wake up sometime in the middle of the night or sometime and and the little voice say you need to pray or meditate or something. And I had trouble there with that because I did not have an image of God, even though I know it's me. I just had trouble making that connection. I don't have that anymore, but I can readily see and understand and feel what ancestors mean. But I just want to know more and make sure I'm on the right page. So anyway, thank you.
So Ron, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So we hear people talk about spirit guides. Are you familiar with that term, spirit guides?
Yes, I
And
can't.
a
Yeah.
lot of times, a lot of times it's the Caucasians that say that. So is it not our ancestors that are our spirit guides?
I would say so.
What the idea of spirit guide comes from Native Americans more so than anybody else.
Okay.
And Native Americans obviously got it from those who sought to introduce spirituality to the world, and that is the African. And again, if you go back in history and look at the time that, not Columbus, but even after Columbus, even when Thomas Jefferson and those boys came over, you will see that what is called Native Americans were actually Africans.
Yeah, I saw that in a documentary, Pastor Jay.
All right, so
The
it
color and everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it does not come as a surprise that they would talk about spirit guides. Spirit guides is simply a different way of talking about ancestors.
Good.
I'm done.
Excellent. I feel better about that. I want to be able to make that connection very easily. Uh, meditation should not be having to go somewhere. It should be just, I'm here. So anyway, any other questions or comments? Um, you guys have heard me say something. You've heard me talk about the Bible is just a collection of words to me, and they become life when they come to life in us, and when you gain understanding and see the truth in it. And those words no longer are just dormant on the page. I think we are currently bringing life to them. I look at the fact that and I'm talking about the people on this phone, uh, week in and week out. I think we will be also the ones in a like manner, excuse me, excuse me, in like manner, bring truth to America. I heard bits and pieces of the inauguration today, and just talk about hear people talk about freedom and democracy and our forefathers, and I'm sitting there thinking none of that has come to life yet. When will that come to life? And I think as we unfold the scriptures, as we unfold ourselves, we will unfold humanity as well, and those words will mean something. All men created equal, not necessarily meaning from a political perspective, but from spiritual. And I just thought that was interesting to hear all that today, knowing that the people that were uttering those words uh, know that those words were written, but they were not written for everybody. It no they when those words were written, they were written in a closet, meaning they were written in darkness because no one was there but European men, and that's all they saw. But those words will come to life, and I think that's what we're in the process of doing now.
I concur with that, Ron, because I also believe that um, Donald Trump's undoing of the Constitution, he's not undoing the Constitution. What he's doing is undoing the pathway that America has taken. And by when I say undoing, he is showing exactly what this country was organized for. The principles that he is promulgating are the principles that are the foundation of this country. And the reason I believe we are that we have so much desire and strength and power to change everything is because the energy of our ancestors was here before enslavement started.
Yeah. Yes. You're
And
right.
and there is no excuse for us as a people not having or not embracing the reality of who we were created to be. There's no excuse for that. Um, I think that what happened earlier when there were a group of us who believed in Pan-Africanism, and still do, by the way. Those of us who were, as we called ourselves, African nationalists. And I believe that the missing pieces was not Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. The missing pieces was it was not intertwined with spirituality. We did not return to our spiritual roots. We sought to change things based upon what Europeans had taught us in their colleges and universities. And that was not going to happen. However, now that we have returned to our spiritual roots, we are beginning to exemplify the massive power and influence that we've always had, but never knew how to use. Does that make sense?
Say it one more time, please.
The power that we've always had,
Uh-huh.
the influence that we've always had, but we didn't know how to use it
Yeah.
because we did not return to our spiritual basis. I mean, think about it. Look at how much we are being shown since we returned to our spiritual base, our foundation. The foundation of the Africa is not geography. African is not geography. The foundation of the African is spirituality. And again, I reiterate, the African came directly from God, from the Creator itself, from the womb of the cosmic mother. That's where the African came from. And everyone else came from us. I was reading, listening to rather, a video, and in that video, the guy said that, think about it. If Africans had never left Africa, we wouldn't have a problem with Europeans because they wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
However, I believe that that's a sound statement.
Explain that a little bit further, if you don't mind.
There were no, if Africans had not left Africa, then the climatic conditions or the evolution would not have taken place with other people based on nutrition as well as where they were located.
Yeah. Okay.
And the last ones to be brought into existence were the Europeans. And that is proven even in this day and age. Remember the Cheddar Man? The Cheddar Man,
I'm not.
European, he found in Europe, had blue eyes, and a light skin, and
No, dark skin,
huh?
dark skin.
Oh, dark. It was dark skin. He had European traits, right? Right,
He had blue eyes and dark skin.
and he was. It was determined that he was one of the first Europeans.
Okay.
So him being one of the first Europeans speaks volumes about what the guy was talking about when he said if we had never left Africa. Now, the other side of that coin is this. We had to do that. What good is it to walk around in the earth and you are God and you have not brought anybody into existence in your likeness and image? What good is it? It's like having a wealth of knowledge and teaching no one. It just doesn't make sense.
So, Pastor, is that why they say God is a verb? Because of the movement? I remember that book I had at one time.
Yeah, I read that book.
So, yeah. So is that why God is a bird? It's the energy is always moving, moving, moving. It's never stagnant.
Yes. Everything in this in the earth, whether it's material or otherwise, is in motion, always in motion. It's the reason it doesn't look like it is because of the density of the atoms.
So the further we get away from enlightenment, the more dense we become or
No.
we are.
The further we get away from enlightenment, the less divine we recognize ourselves as being. I mean, think about it. We were religious, more religious than the folk who taught us to be religious, you know?
Yes.
And we believed every word that religion taught us. And the reason being, because we're so spiritual. And we embraced that as being spirituality when it really wasn't. I think that we have not looked at enlightenment enough. In that enlightenment is, we were born enlightened. We just did not access the enlightenment. And many of us, when we saw truth or enlightenment, we didn't know what to do with it. And some of us used it to prove the wisdom of the African, as opposed to understanding that enlightenment is for everyone. And we are the ones who are to enlighten humanity. That's an obligation. That's not a choice.
So I have one more question and I'm done.
Sure you are.
I mean it.
Okay.
So what's the difference? My grandma and them and my mom and them, they would pray, Pastor Jay,
Mhm.
and we saw results. And they would say, don't worry about it. Just like you tell us when we have situations, don't worry about it, I got it. What's the difference now? It's like when they pray, things change. You know what I mean? And
What the difference
what
is?
is it?
They were sincere.
Yeah.
They were sincere. And theirs was based on mercy. And there comes a time when you begin to see that mercy is not going to be with you always. Mercy is not enough. And that's what happened with us. Did we believe in the existence of mercy? Of course we did. That's what kept us in the place where we were. That's what pushed us to ask questions. Now that we know better, we are obligated to do better. And mercy is not one of those things that you want to bank your life on when you know better. Because you can't play with what we are seeing, what we are being shown. You cannot play with that. I was thinking today about how relative Christianity is. And the relativity of Christianity can be seen in the African churches in America, the Caucasian churches. The relativity of it can be seen everywhere Christianity exists. It's a very convenient religion. It allows you to do what you want to do. and to make excuses. It allows you to abuse people without consequences. Because the African was told, the enslaved person was told, if you disobey your master, you're going to hell. But the slave owner was never told, if you lynch, or if you cut the throat of your enslaved persons, you're going to hell. They were never told that. Christianity is a convenient, and the convenience of Christianity when it came to us was that it was a convenient way of imposing self-enslavement without seeking to free ourselves from it. And it also served as a catalyst that caused enslaved people to desire to be free. It worked two ways. Does that help, Evan?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mhm. I would never dismiss what the elders did in terms of their praying and their belief system. I would never dismiss that. If it were not for them, we would not even know to question what we're doing. And I've said this before, and I'll reiterate it. I grew up hearing older people in our church saying about white people, I don't know what God they serve, because my God would not allow me to do that. I don't know what heaven they talking about with all the things that they do, that kind of stuff. Audrey?
Weren't our elders, though, they were closer to the land, closer to nature, so they felt things,
Yes.
you know, they experienced things. So, I think that's one reason why they were able to get results too.
I agree with that.
And even each other, they were more of a community, you know.
And in the African community, some of you may remember this. There were people within the community, if you got burned, it said they would talk to fire to you. If you, and there was someone in the community who knew what tea to make to deal with certain things that was happening in your body. But all of that was kept quiet within the African community because, according to Christianity, it was voodoo. It was something evil, according to Christianity. But but it was never cast out of our community until we got educated.
Pastor, can you differentiate what's being designated as witchcraft? Because that's what they lump voodoo into, versus the spiritual authority that we walk in.
Um, Witchcraft is debunked by white people and Christians. And the reason is because they did not understand it. The very thing that they call witchcraft slash voodoo is simply any spiritual beliefs that Africans had was automatically called witchcraft, and witchcraft was made to be a negative thing. The idea of using magic to make things happen was not foreign to the Kemites at all. The only time that the things that are now called negatively witchcraft, that did not happen until Africans came in contact with Europeans. Prior to that, that didn't happen. I'll tell you something else. No, I won't get into that. Go ahead. Regina, does that help you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I mean, when you think about what I just said about somebody talking to fire you, that sounds ridiculous because we've been taught that it's ridiculous. Yet, growing up, I don't know about you, but I experienced it. I saw it. And Martha could do it. Um, there was an incident where at a young age, Phoebe's twin sisters burned their face. They fell on the heat and burned their face. And Phoebe's mama kept it, put, what am I talking about? She kept an ointment on it. And the same thing had happened to one of their cousins. And Phoebe's twin sisters, you can't even tell they were ever burned in their life. Yet the one who didn't do it, who went to the doctor, still has a scar on one side of her face. One side of her face is nothing but a scar from having fallen on a heater and burned her face. What's the difference? It's obvious, isn't it? The thing that's called witchcraft was the real thing that helped. They don't have any scars on their face. I hope that helps. Virginia, in your note, you said that you experienced a lot of that in your community.
Yes, sir.
So, on the heels of saying that, of reading that rather, the further you get from the Midlands of upstate of South Carolina, the more you encounter the traits of our African ancestors that people are still honoring. You see a lot of that, especially in the southern part of the state. It has not gone anyplace, but they don't talk about it.
Remember, it was like very hush hush when people came to my Grand Aunt May's house or Miss Elnora's house. Like it was something that was not talked about. It was kind of like going in through the back door and things happening, kids being, told to go in the front room.
Yep. Sounds familiar. But it's like the language. I can't remember that language. Let me see. I have it written. What is that? Toot. The language Toot was a language that was developed by enslaved people, and it was so hush hush until there were neighbors who did not know that the other ones could speak Toot. And that language is, there are a few people who are able to speak that language to this day. And all of them who are able to speak that language that I know of has connections, has roots in South Carolina. Now, I'm not saying that it was not prevalent on other plantations because with what happened on the New Year's Day was that slaves were rented out or leased or sold. So that means that during that period, they were able to teach other people the language, and then being leased out, they were brought back to the same plantation that they left. So there were various ways that we are not privy to yet that Africans were able to communicate. And when you think about a group of people who cannot read English are able to develop a language, at the beginning, it seems like, oh my God, that's something, until we realize that all languages emanated from us. If everyone came from us.
Yeah.
And to say that people who were enslaved could not read when they were brought to this country, yes, they could. They could read. They just couldn't read English.
Mhm.
It was not as it has been presented. And I do believe the reason we are talking about this, one of them anyway, is in preparation for making sure that we remind ourselves of our roots because of what's on the horizon. And what's on the horizon is going to affect a large number of people, especially people of color. However, we cannot have empathy for the people of color and not have empathy for the Europeans in this country, the Americans, who are Caucasians, who support everything that Trump does and lose on the other end. We cannot have empathy for everyone except them because they're going to suffer too. And the suffering comes from ignorance. They are not aware of how things function in this country, and they don't want to be made aware of it. Only thing that they're made aware of is they white. That's it. And whiteness goes a long way in Europe and in this country. This, and I keep saying country, but don't forget that what I really mean, this colony. I heard a lady say today in her prayer, asking God, thanking God rather, for granting Americans the privilege of building a country and building a democracy in this land. So you thanking God for allowing you to commit genocide, for allowing you to murder people of color in order to take their land. That's essentially what that is.
Yeah.
Because they were considered heathens and we're still considered heathens.
Yeah. And on top of that, you kill you kill 1 million people, and the people you kill, you call them savages. Come on,
Yeah.
who is the savage?
Pastor, you know what I think about though? How we thought the Indians were wrong for trying to get, you know how you watch the Westerns? I love Westerns, but we thought the Indians were wrong because they were killing the colonizers. But now, when you think about it, huh?
Go ahead.
I never thought they were.
Now well, I did it because I was a little girl. But then you like, okay, now we've been brought up to knowing history that the colonizer took everybody's land, and it's amazing how we have been brainwashed and bamboozled and all that other stuff, isms or whatever. The world just paints a different picture, and now that we're learning history, more of the history, I just don't understand how they mess with our minds like that. But that's all I want to say.
over the years, they mess with your mind by the brutality that they show you. I didn't grow up thinking I couldn't understand why Tonto rode with Lone Ranger instead of shooting him. That's how I grew up. Um, our minds. If someone were to take your children when they are like 4 or 5 years old and bash their head in with a stone because you won't capitulate to believe in what they're teaching you, then the next generation of everybody who witnessed that, the mother especially, they're going to teach them to go along with whatever they're being told so they won't be killed the same way. So when you talk about messing with minds, you mess up minds before you have a chance to mess with minds. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, that was another question earlier, Evan.
I know. I know.
It's okay.
We didn't make this language up, but reality is we speak a different language 3 days a week. Nobody wants to hear this. They wouldn't understand it if they did.
And it's not even necessary for them to hear it. Because the language that we speak is the language of the Creator. And that in itself is influential. Just because people go to church, it doesn't mean that they're not a part of the same spirit that we are. The spirit doesn't change. It can be ignored, but it's always there. And so when we talk about speaking the language of the Creator, look at what happened with COVID. There are people who did not return to those churches because they saw them for what they really were. And we talked about those things. Look at the number of people who are talking about the universe is what changes things, or I trust the universe. How we hear that all the time. Where did that come from? It comes from a language that is spoken that we had from the beginning, and that language is a spiritual language. The sound of that language may be English, but the actual language itself is not. And the reason they don't want to hear it or they don't understand it is no different than if we were speaking Chinese or Mandarin and they didn't understand Mandarin, you know?
Yeah.
It's the same principle. Yet we continue to speak, and we must continue to speak. I'm trying one.
Good discussion. Anyone else? Question or comment?
Rev, this is Charles. Going back to when you were saying about speaking the fire out of someone, I only see women were doing it. I never saw a man doing it.
Me either. I've never seen a man do that either. Quite frankly, even though there are in today's environment, I've never seen a man be a midwife. There are a lot of things that women did that I've never seen a man do. I remember when the people people in our community. Only thing males did was go get the rabbit tobacco, go get the locusts, go get the pine needles, and you retrieve them. And the only people I really saw who were working with those things were females.
Yes, you're right.
Now, is there any of you who have experienced something, different than that?
You know one that did it from Richard.
Say again?
You know one that did it. Man.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It was a midwife or did the medicine stuff.
The medicine stuff.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying men couldn't do it. I have never seen one do it. That's all. Only thing they did was retrieve. And then when we got old enough, guess what we did? We did the same thing. We would retrieve everything that was needed. Done, Mr. Ron, unless there are questions.
I guess it's a good place to take a pause. I like to say something though. We don't necessarily have to record it. It wouldn't matter.
Hold on 1 second then, Ron. Vermeer, would you cease recording, please?
Oh, certainly.
Thank you.